Good evening. This is Tuesday, July 16, 2024 at 6:05. This meeting will be conducted in person in the City Council chambers and via remote video and teleconference pursuant to 1 MRSA Sections 403B2D and Section 6 of the Sanford City Council Rules of Procedures and amended and adopted February 6, 2024. Members of the public may join the meeting in person or remotely using the information posted on the meeting calendar on the city's website. Members of the public may also submit comments via the website under government/city council/contact the council. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, at this time, we typically do the moment of silence, and I think now would be a good time to, during that moment of silence, think about our politicians and pray for their wisdom during this time. And last meeting we had, I commented on how well we function as a committee. We don't always agree. We argue a little, but we always end laughing and enjoying one another. And I hope all of our politicians will learn to behave in that manner. So during this moment of silence, let's think positive thoughts. Thank you. Now for roll call. Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Present.
Councilor Stackpole?
Present.
Councilor Hanselman?
Present.
Councilor Martell?
Present.
Councilor Trench-Montagne?
Present.
Councilor Hitchcock?
Present.
And I am Mayor Brink, and also present is City Manager Steve Buck. And Larissa Ricketts is our Executive Administrator, and she's online watching everything and taking notes. All right. Let's take a look at our minutes in order to approve the minutes from the regular council meeting held on July 2nd, 2024.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Second? Pete?
Second.
Thank you. Am I doing this slow enough so she can knows who's doing what? Okay, good. And the next is in order to approve the minutes from the executive session of the City Council held on July 2nd, 2024. We have to vote on the first one. Oh, we didn't vote. Thank you. Let's vote on the first set of minutes. Everybody in favor? Yeah. Second. Okay, now on the next one, I need a motion.
So moved, Madam
Nate,
Mayor.
thank you very much. A second. Pete?
I'll second that.
Now all those in favor? All right, thank you very much. And there is no mayor's report, and we had no subcommittees, so that we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. A few items. Nomination papers will be available in the city clerk's office starting July 25th. There is one position for city mayor for a two-term. There are two positions for city council members, both three-year terms. There's one position for a school committee member, a three-year term. One position for trustee of the Sanford Water District for a three-year term. One position for trustee for the Sanford Sewage District, three-year term, and one position for trustee of the Sanford Sewer District to fill an unexpired term beginning 11/6/24 and ending on 12/31/26. To qualify for these municipal offices, candidates must be registered voters with their principal place of residence in the city of Sanford or village of Springvale. And candidates must obtain a minimum number of signatures pursuant to the positions they're running for. For city council and school committee members, they must have 50 signatures as authorized, substantiated by the city clerk. And for trustees for the Sanford Water or Sewer Districts, there's 25 signatures. The deadline for filing these nomination papers will be Wednesday, September 4th by 5:30 p.m. Floodplain management. I wanted to make the council aware that pursuant to the changes in the federal floodplain management maps, City Council reviewed and adopted the new ordinance per state regulation on May 21st, 2024. We just received, as of July 9th, the city received confirmation from the state that the city's ordinance, as adopted, met compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program, and that a copy is being filed with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the State Emergency Management Agency, and our Regional Planning Commission. So we've met our compliance for floodplain zoning. EPA, the area-wide assessment and remediation funds, Keith McBride, our executive director, who will be presenting later this evening. The Sanford Regional Growth Council continues to complete the application process for the $500,000 area-wide assessment grant, as well as the $5 million Brownsfield cleanup grant. Once the application process is complete, the funds will become available as of October 1st. A request for qualifications is pending by the end of August for the qualified environmental consultant that will work with the city on the implementation of each of these grants. The selection of the consultant will take place in September for an October 1st start date. The last item I have is the Maine Department of Environmental Protection reached out to us pursuant to a inspection they did on June 12th. That was the Heritage Crossing encampment area. DEP came here to do an inspection of that area adjacent to the river that was inside of the shoreline zoning. DEP identified, well, I still have not gotten the letter back from them pursuant to that inspection, but they did identify several transformers leaking oil onto the ground. Subsequent communications by DEP and to EPA indicated they were seeking a responsible party to pay for the cleanup. The city, as did our consultant TRC, provided documentation that pursuant to the act of condemnation by the city's taking of the Regco boiler house as surveyed, emphasis, lot J29-24, the city did not include the parcel of land, a former portion of that larger lot, which is known to us as the pump house, which is where the transformers and the leaking oil is. So once we provided the survey and the act of condemnation, they were done communicating with us on that. Christopher Redmond from the Maine DEP confirmed to Region 1 EPA that the city does not own that portion of lot J2924, as confirmed by our survey work. Maine DEP was thinking that the recently awarded Brownfield cleanup grant would be utilized for this cleanup work. Maine Department of Environmental Protection is going to their resource services and the hazmat waste program, who has previously worked with the International Woolen Mill site for the past number of years to make an assessment for actions to take place. So that's all I had under the manager's report. The Homeless Task Force, they met again this past Monday. Areas that they looked at and or reviewed was the Heritage Crossing encampment closure. The Resource Hub provided housing for over 20 individuals since enacted and in conjunction with the closure. Daily contact with persons that are still unhoused are being made by housing staff, case managers, and the mental health unit officers via the bike patrol. Resources are offered and encouraged for the people to accept to break the cycle of homelessness. The cleanup. On June 17th, 18th, and 19th, our Public Works removed by mechanical means 9 18-cubic-yard trucks totaling 170 cubic yards of trash, waste, and assorted materials associated with the encampment. There were 3 20-gallon medical sharp containers full that were removed, as well as several 5-gallon buckets partially filled with medical sharps. On July 8th, 9th, and 10th, pursuant to the Council's authorization, Trauma Services was engaged. They came with crews in PPE, and they handpicked materials remaining in the underbrush around the trees and scattered as trained personnel with their protective equipment. They bagged 475 60-gallon bags of materials from the site after the mechanical cleanup. They also picked up another 6 8-gallon containers full of medical sharps, or another 48 gallons of sharps that were scattered amongst the ground and amongst the debris. So we were able to document between the mechanical and the contracted services, 347 cubic yards were taken out. When I convert the documented 110 gallons of medical sharps, knowing that they were given out in boxes of 100, I equate that to 14,716 syringes that were taken out of that encampment area. Contacts have been made to main access points in the Maine CDC, the Hepatitis and Harm Reduction Program Manager, to discuss new options on exchange and the improper disposal of syringes causing a public health hazard. I've been asking the CDC for recognition. You have a harm reduction program on one side for bloodborne pathogens, but the improper disposal of these syringes are creating a public health hazard in another area. I'm still seeking that recognition. It's been difficult. Let's see. Information indicates that we currently are dealing with approximately 15 chronically unhoused people in the city, and we continue to encourage them to take resources that are available. Connections to services, a street outreach worker. The need for street outreach services continues to be a challenging area of significant need. Communications have been made to the Maine State Housing for potential use of the recently adopted emergency housing relief funds that could be an option to fund such a position. Lauren Bustard, the Senior Director of Homelessness Initiatives at Maine State Housing, indicated that a notice of funding, or a NOFA, will be published on August 16th with a deadline of September 30th, for which the city intends to support an application by York County Shelter Program to apply for funding for one, if not two, community outreach street workers. It's also made known that there's a NOFA for winter warming shelter funding that will be released on July 19th with the deadline of August 23rd. Currently, options with the York County Shelter Program are still under consideration, but not the Lafayette School location, as was utilized last winter. We reviewed the Housing First at Heritage Crossing location where the former encampment was. The Sanford Housing Authority and their consultants presented a pre-application to the city on July 9th. The pre-app went very well on the 30 unit to be developed. The consultant is working diligently to have submissions for the August site plan meeting and a near subsequent planning board meeting to obtain their permits. Low-income housing tax credit program, or the LIHTC, through Maine Housing will open this September. The project will be permitted by that time for a very competitive application for the first round of funding, for which we have been assured that Sanford will be in the first round of that funding. An RFP for architects should soon produce a selection by July 26. This should put the project on a track for a spring 2026 groundbreaking. The future release of funds through Maine Housing for rent support of $800 per month for up to 24 months was reviewed. Maine State Housing is working as to how they will implement this. They're not sure as to yet who the vendor will be that will implement that program and distribute the funds. The task force will utilize those pending resources to prevent homelessness due to economics as details are released. The funds, if used at the full, so if you take the $800 per month times 24 months, that would serve approximately 937 households statewide. So $18 million sounds like a large sum of money. That's not a large number of households. There's many more than that exceeding that need. Other resources that were discussed, the York County expansion of Layman's Way in Alfred for substance use and detox center. Expansion has achieved its full permitting. It is slated to go to construction by October of this year with an approximate 1 year of construction period. We also discussed the York County Region 1 hub for the coordination of case management, which continues to implement for all providers a uniform form to go into the HMIS system for the unhoused. We referenced our 19 strategies, which is the Sanford Housing Director is conferencing with the U.S. Interagency on Homelessness to review our region's work on the 19 strategies and seeking further guidance on best practices following the closure of the encampment, as well as preventing homelessness moving forward. And then lastly, the annual housing forum. The City Council has held a housing forum here for the last 2 or 3 years?
3 years, I think.
Yeah, I think
it's
3 years now. The task force discussed asking that format be changed slightly, that it's less time spent in presenting what has been done in the last year and more time in discussing the needs going forward so that we can use that for advocacy purposes. We intend to, again, have a homelessness forum with our York County legislators at the Performing Arts Center as we did last year, and we could tag off from the information that we gleaned from our housing forum in August and bring that forward for the December issue, as well as to line that up with the Mayor's Coalition and the LPC for pending legislative actions for the long session. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I wanted to make just a few comments to point out a few things. Steve has been doing these reports now about the homeless task force for well over a year, and it's taken a lot of effort and time to put this stuff into place. We've had strategies, is it 17 or 19 strategies? 19 strategies from the federal government that we need to put into place and to follow through on. And our team has done a phenomenal job at putting stuff into place. And in case you aren't aware, before May of this year, we had over 200 homeless people on our streets and in the encampments. Steve just mentioned we're down to 15. And 2 of the 15 are now asking they want to be placed in a facility to help them with substance abuse. So they're seeking help. So the things that we as a city have put into place are helping the homeless population. So Steve, I just want to give you kudos for the fact that you thought ahead and you helped us put all of this into place. So thank you very much. Also,
If I
go
could
ahead.
comment on that, it's, for those of you that have been attending the Homeless Task Force, it's the combined resources of all of our partner organizations, and really the thoughtfulness that they've put into dealing with the human impact that we're witnessing with the unhoused, and a best way to address that. So very proud of that work, and can't thank our partnering organizations enough.
Thank you. Also, Steve mentioned about the 950 households that could be helped with the funds that the state put forth, and he made a comment that it's very little funding. The 950 households are in all of Maine, so you can see how little help that is, and they really need to put a lot more into place to help some of our struggling families. Does anybody here, Ann, comment?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to add, under the annual housing forum update that Steve shared, that the task force also discussed really inviting and encouraging community input and actively seeking folks from the community to come to that gathering to share their concerns about future housing, their housing needs. I know folks have talked to me about, like, gosh, how do my 24-year-old kids move home? They can't afford housing here. So we're going to really actively work to engage the community in those conversations also.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so we're going to move right along to communications and presentations, and I do have one communications first I want to share before we go to the 2 presentations. The Springville Farm Walk is coming up, and that is July 27th and 28th. Excuse me. That goes from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. both Saturday and Sunday, and there are 10 different farms that you can actually walk a path to, and they'll be, they have sheep and an orchard, fruit orchards and vegetables and herbs and berries and much more, and they'll also be selling some items along the way. So please dress appropriately to do a farm walk. And I gave all of you guys a copy of that so you can share it with everyone that you know.
Did you mention the dance?
Oh,
On Saturday
there is a
evening?
dance on Saturday evening, too. So for those, that's at McDougal's Orchard. And so for those of you who really like to dance and live it up, buy a ticket. All right? And for anyone who wants more information, you can come up here and use that little cute little code thing there, and I'll share my paper with you. I know they're called something, but I can never remember what they're.
QR code.
QR, I'll never get it. You know I won't. Okay. All right. Scott Susi, come on down. He's doing a presentation for the Sanford Fire Department promotions.
Allergies.
Oh.
Can I have Captain Watkins, Lieutenant Jones, Firefighter Lappin, and your people that are going to pin you come down?
See, he's prepared.
Mayor Buck, Manager Brink, and Council. Had to get that
I'm
R
the
in there.
manager now, and he's the mayor. It's perfect.
You've been watching TV too much.
I know. I have the privilege to be here this evening to introduce the 3 newest promotions to the Sanford Fire Department leadership staff. Positions are earned through a process of reviewing qualifications, interviews, and testing. Each member standing before you this evening has earned a leadership position they are to receive. I just have a couple of things for them to think about tonight as we welcome them to their new roles. Leadership is defined as an office or position, those innate qualities that are hard to define and even harder to create parameters for. Leadership does embody being principled, leading by example, and inspiring people to be the best that they can be, to be their best in their profession. Harry S. Truman said, "Make history and not the other way around." In periods where there's leadership, society stands still. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. Leaders need to remain ever focused on what needs to be accomplished, and they give individuals and groups the support they need to achieve these goals, even when mistakes are made. Don't ask someone to do something without giving them the tools to achieve that goal, whatever it be education or equipment. Set them up for success and not a failure. A willingness to act and to venture forward needs to be nurtured, as opposed to installing fear of failure. Captain Brian Watkins has served the city of Sanford for 25 years, 10 of those years as a captain paramedic, and is now ready to begin a new chapter of his firefighter career as Assistant Chief for the Sanford Fire Department, assuming the role from retiring Chief Robert Arnold. Lieutenant Gregory Jones has served the city of Sanford for the past 23 years, 10 years as a lieutenant paramedic, now being promoted to A-shift captain. Firefighter paramedic Jamie Lappin has served the city of Sanford for the past 8 years as a certified firefighter paramedic, now being promoted to D-shift lieutenant. I'd like to be the first to congratulate all three of you on a great accomplishment, and welcome to the leadership staff. Assistant Chief Watkins.
Brian G. Watkins, having served the city of Sanford proudly for the past 25 years, 10 of those years as a captain paramedic, now ready to begin a new chapter of firefighter career as assistant chief. You, Brian Watkins, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Maine so long as you shall continue thereof. And do you, Brian Watkins, swear that you will faithfully discharge, to the best of your abilities, the duties incumbent upon you as Chief of the Fire Department, according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and in all respects shall observe the charter and ordinances of the city.
You can fix it at home.
Gregory Jones, having served the city of Sanford proudly for the past 23 years, 10 of those years as you lieutenant paramedic, is now ready to begin a new chapter of the firefighter career, A-shift captain. You, Gregory Jones, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Maine so long as you shall continue a citizen thereof. And do you, Gregory Jones, swear that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent upon you as A-shift captain captain for the City of Sanford Fire Department according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and in all respects shall observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances. Having served the City of Sanford proudly for the past 8 years as a certified firefighter and paramedic, is now ready to begin a new chapter as his firefighter career as a ship lieutenant. Lapham solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Maine, so long as you shall continue a citizen thereof. I do. And you, Jamie Lapham, swear that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent upon you as ship lieutenant for the City of Sanford Fire Department according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and in all respects shall observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the City of Sanford.
Thank you.
I'm giving you ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was excellent. All right. And for our next area of recognition, we're doing Bill Tower. You want to come on down?
So I vacillated somewhat in bringing this to the council, but I never miss an opportunity to brag on my dispatch center. So I'm here tonight. My awardees are in absentia, but I did want to bring to your attention that the state has recognized 4 of our dispatchers, 2 reserves and 2 full-times, for being effective in providing CPR instruction and/or the follow-on hands-on CPR that the fire department did in bringing people back to life. So those 2 awardees who are full-time are Megan Welch and Chelsea Breton, and we have 2 reserves. One is a fire chief actually up in Waterboro, Mark Cunningham, who is a reserve for us, and Jeff Clark, who is now a realtor, but still does reserve for us. So very fine dispatchers. I just want to bring to your attention that, and I've got their awards, so you can take a look at what the state provided. Fairly nice.
Were they just trying to avoid the pictures, do you think?
You know how dispatchers love the radio and they hate the camera? So that's what we're dealing with, yes. But I will provide them an appropriate in-house recognition presentation. But I just didn't want to pass this opportunity up to let you know that you've got some outstanding dispatch staff. Not only these folks, but my entire staff continues in their professionalism and their ability to respond appropriately in all emergencies. And they've had some pretty tough ones over the past summer, as you know. So that's all I had.
All right. Thank you very much.
I got to steal those
And
back.
thank your staff for us. And thank the fire department families for coming and celebrating with us, too. Really appreciate it. Congratulations. And now for public participation. And to explain what public participation is, it's for stuff that's not already on the agenda, and it's usually citizens of Sanford, and usually you have about 3 minutes to present. So what you'll do is you'll come forward, you'll introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and then you'll state what you are. Just to let you know, the council never makes comments under public participation because depending upon what your issue is, we are only hearing one side of an issue, so we never respond under this. So just to make it clear, so you'll know we're not purposely not saying anything, it's just that's the procedure. All right. We have and hopefully I get this name correct, it's Babette Gordy. Oh, right at the mic, please.
Well, I need to give you something.
Okay.
This is for the city manager. This is for you, and y'all are gonna have to share, sorry. It's okay. You share now. Oh, yeah. My name is Babette Gordy. I live in Sanford Mill Apartments. I congratulate you and applaud you on cleaning out the tent city. However, this is causing our residents a lot of problems. My grandchildren live up the hill and are scared to come see me. I have to go up there and walk down with them. Last Saturday, I cleaned out the walk area, the public walk area, because they're living there. 4 hypodermic needles. Kids cannot roll around in the grass in Gateway Park. It is so horrible. When you walk past that river, it smells like somebody has just gone to the bathroom. It smells so horrible. I am watching people out my bedroom window all night long doing drugs, sitting in that area doing drugs. This is unacceptable. I watch this one woman, she will put her legs open, with no underwear on, laying in the park. She was topless last Sunday. This is constantly going on. The little area in between the park and the walkway, they are going to the bathroom in. I had to rehome a snapping turtle the other day that was about this large that I had to move because he had poop and pee all over him. This is unacceptable. I am a tax-paying citizen. I work for a living. I work in my bedroom. I watch this all day long. I am so highly upset with this, I can't even see straight. I have them going by my window shooting the bird at me because I call the police on a constant basis. I am so upset about this. Nobody should have to live this way. And we have children in my building, and everyone is scared all the time. I can't even go in my front door in the evening time because they'll scoot in there and they'll wait for us. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable behavior, and I would really like the council to do something about this. The police are trying. Your poor city workers, they're constantly cleaning up after these nasty, nasty people. This is not homelessness. This is drug addiction. I sat there this morning and watched a guy trying to shoot up, and he had so many scars that he couldn't even get the needle in. It's ridiculous, and I'm just so fed up with it.
Thank you. I think you're going to enjoy something later on our agenda, which is going to be Ordinance Chapter 107. The city and the police officers cannot act upon something unless we put an ordinance in place. You're going to like this ordinance.
I really hope so.
I think so.
I'm so upset about this whole
And,
thing.
and we're going to keep on going with the ordinance because there's some other parts to this that will help out. So we've got our city manager contacted the lawyers. We've got some stuff into place. We're waiting for another feedback, but this will be the start. That'll help. So thank you for coming forward. We appreciate that.
Thank you for speaking.
And I think the next one is Chris Hart, if I got the last name correct.
I apologize, I didn't get a copy of the agenda, so I don't really honestly know. This is my first time at a city
Well,
meeting.
you tell us what it is, and I'll let you know.
Yes, ma'am. My name is, I'm speaking on behalf of opposition to the polling place consolidation. And I
That
don't know
is
if-
going to be, it isn't on tonight, it's going to be on August, is it the 20?
August 6th.
August the 6th? Yeah,
6th.
yeah.
Should I speak tonight, or should I wait till August 6th to speak?
You can do whatever you want.
All right. Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councilmen and women, my name is Chris Hart. Good evening. I'm here to speak in opposition to polling place consolidation. I'm a disabled Army vet, serving from February 2005 through April 2013, with a tour to Iraq, December of 2007 to February 2009. During the City Council meeting, as you all are aware, on July 2nd, it was approved to move forward the consolidation of the polling places in Sanford from 3 to 1. With the final vote to take place on August 6th, to be in place for the November election. As Felicia stated, there are currently three different locations which accommodate large groups of people, handicapped, and elderly. Trying to consolidate one location, Trying to consolidate one location would only hurt the already low turnout throughout the city and Sanford is facing, and I do believe it would also be voter suppression if this was being pushed through it as it is right now. There are multiple people in the city with the inability to drive or get rides and must result in walking to the polling location to cast their ballots. I understand York County Community Action is willing to add a stop to the high school so that citizens are able to stop and cast their ballots, but they also cost money, and some citizens can't afford the extra cost currently in this economy that we face right now. I believe the consolidation of wards is being rushed without research or time to explore this option. There has already been voting at these polling places done this year. Trying to make these drastic changes before a major election would only cause confusion and problems, and it was encouraged during that meeting to take place in either mail-in voting or early voting. Mail-in voting was designed for servicemen during the Civil War. It was required to have a specific reason to be able to vote, to use the mail-in vote. I understand COVID-19 changed a lot during the pandemic, and this has made it easier for people to vote. But what about the people who want to vote in exercising their fundamental right that they deserve? Changing the wards only 91 days from the final vote on August 6th isn't going to be enough time for this to be a smooth process. Taking away the rights that people, myself, and others have fought for, and others have given their lives for, is not right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of your questions will be answered in August, so please come to that meeting. Thank you. And David LaHoo?
Hello, Council, Mayor, Mr. Buck. My name's Dave LaHoo. I'm from South Sanford, and the voting issue isn't on this agenda, but my colleague here seems to have brought to my attention that I don't want to wait till August 6th to speak about it. And the last I knew that there was a consensus in regards to 2 polling places at the old high school and the new high school, and to find out that it's going to be consolidated into one place just doesn't seem to make sense. That going from, I think, what was 13 polls down to 3, or multiple polls down to 3 and now down to 1 is seems to be a power grab, and I just don't agree with it. I want to move on to, in regards to the solar panel projects that you're planning for Mountain River Solar Municipal Development. I mean, how many solar panels in our town is going to be enough?
David, that one is on the agenda. If I'm not,
Well, it says public hearing, so is that,
no, this is public participation.
so that's, I can't speak about that?
When we get to that under public hearing, you can. So I'm
All
going to
right.
call you back up at that point.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Dave.
David, I'll tell you, it took me months to learn the process, so I understand. That was it we didn't have anybody online? All right, so we can move right ahead. Now for public hearings. Let me get the stuff ready for this. And we have 2 public hearings, and so I'm going to open this one, and it is a public hearing to take comments for or against the proposed Sanford of City Ordinance, Chapter 107, City Property, Article 1, use of city property, subsection 107-1, restricted access. And this is the one I think you're going to want to listen to really carefully, because I think it's going to address some of that. So is there anyone to speak in favor of this? But Steve should, I have you explain what this is so the public understands.
Yes, if you'd allow me to give a recap so the public can comment on this. So this goes to the use of city-owned property, be it tax acquired, purchased, or rights-of-way and such under that. It starts a new chapter of our city ordinances that we've not had before. It's called city property. The first Article 1 would be use of city-owned and/or acquired property. Under this provision, this is the first draft. We've already made amendments, and I'll bring those amendments up to you here tonight. But Section 107-1, restricted access, states whenever a parcel of land, along with any structures or appurtenances thereto, is acquired by the City of Sanford through foreclosure, purchase, or otherwise, the city manager is authorized to restrict access and the use of said property by others, and have it so posted. Once posted to the satisfaction of the police chief, the police department will prosecute trespassers and may cause the removal at the owner's expense of property including vehicles not permitted on the site. This has been amended already, so we're bringing those for consideration here this evening. It gets more specific, not just vehicles, but campers, trailers, and other property. Items being stored, we see that extensively, items that are being stored. So let me speak to the premise of the overall element of this. This was in works prior to the Grants Pass versus Johnson's Supreme Court decision that struck down any violation of the Eighth Amendment as far as enforcement of city-owned property for camping and other utilizations. So this is drafted before that. Subsequent to that, the passage of the U.S. Supreme Court decision, other sections of this ordinance have been drafted. City Council is going to bring that forward for the August 6th as a public hearing and a first read on the other ordinances that will get into camping, storage, and other elements on city-owned property. So again, this is the first step in the start of the Chapter 107 about the use of city-owned property, what can and can't be done. This is very open and broad-based on being able to post the property and take appropriate actions. The subsequent articles to this that are coming forward get far more specific as to what can or cannot be done on city-owned property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against? Seeking none, I declare this hearing closed. Open a public hearing to receive public comments on the Mousom River Solar Municipal Development and Tax Increment Finance District. The district will consist of 140.25 acres of authorize the city manager to enter into a credit enhancement agreement with the developer. Is there anybody to speak in favor? And Steve, is this where you explain this, or do you think it's clear?
Well, we could have Keith McBride present on the proposal during the public hearing, and then the council will take this up under a subsequent action item, or you can have him present under the action item.
I think for people to speak for or against, I think it would be better if Keith came down now. And Keith, would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Good evening. I'm Keith McBride, Executive Director of the Sanford Regional Economic Growth Council. Our function in the TIF process is to be sort of the initial evaluator and vetter, if you will, of requests for TIFs here for the city of Sanford. So we have, let's stretch this out a little bit more. There we go. Our board has taken a look at this. We've reviewed it, and we've discussed it. I will also mention that Dale Knapp is here, who's a representative of Walden Renewables, and Alyssa Tibbetts, attorney for Walden Renewables, is also here if there are questions specific to the developer that they're willing to address. Full disclosure, this is not a picture of their project in Sanford because it doesn't exist yet, but this is one, I believe that's in Massachusetts. This is in Wells. Oh, okay. Well, it's not far then. I thought it was a nice picture.
No, did you say Wells or Wellesley?
Wells.
Wells.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the whole purpose of creating a new TIF district is designated an area of property and capturing new taxes that result from an increase in that value, usually from some type of investment, which the captured revenues of that, which can be designated for certain uses allowed by state law. So we start with the map, and we start with actual plots of property Our policy here in the city is not to split existing tax map lots. So what we have are 6 lots, and it's a little tricky to see because we're using yellow on tan, but they are 2 areas of property that span across Alfred Road going down the middle, High Street connecting to it, and then across the top there, New Dam Road. Down in this area, you can't see my cursor, down in the lower right area, oh, you can see it. There it is. Down in the lower right area here, there are already is a solar project down in this area. So we have some on the east side of Alfred Road and some on the west side, a total of 6 acres, and I think as the mayor read, it's a total of 140.25 acres. The project that's proposed would be a 20 megawatt capacity solar array. That would be enough power roughly to power about 15,000 homes. The energy that's being produced in this project is going to the grid. It is not being, some of the other projects we have where that power is being purchased and for the advantage of other areas. It's going directly to CMP, to the grid here in Maine. The developers estimated there'll be 132 temporary jobs involved in the development of this, and 1 to 2 permanent jobs for technicians that would be skilled workers in the solar field. So this is the property that's being discussed for this TIF. The project itself, again, that's a $23 million investment for this developer to build this array, which as I mentioned, is a 20 megawatt capacity. And I also already mentioned the CMP piece and the jobs. The captured revenues from this are going to go to fund a number of different things. We're going to handle them one at a time. First of all, we can utilize captured revenues from a TIF to fund certain what I call priority goals. State law says there are certain things you can spend this funding on. We've had some conversations with the council and with the Growth Council board on what are the priority things that we'd like to see funded. The advantage of funding things out of a TIF is that money can be designated and that money is also sheltered. So when you're spending money out of the TIF, it doesn't necessarily hit the tax rate the same way that the city's operating budget would, for example. So we have identified these items to be funded in various amounts over the 30-year life of this TIF as sort of the priority things that we could help fund. I'll mention specifically public safety facilities and municipal offices. We know that there is an effort underway to try to build fire stations here in Sanford. Tax increment financing funds can be used to support that, but its use is limited by law to 15%. So every drop in the bucket is another drop in the bucket. So 15% is not nothing, but unfortunately this certainly is not going to fund the entire fire station proposal. Quality child care and adult care, which I know the council has talked about, and the Growth Council board as well, as being a particularly important economic development and workforce development issue, as is affordable housing and homelessness remediation. These are all things that TIF funds can be utilized to help fund on behalf of the city, and broadband expansion. The second piece that we'll utilize TIF funds for in this case is for what's called a credit enhancement agreement. Under a typical credit enhancement agreement, you're using some of the funds captured under a tax increment financing district and reimbursing the developer some of their funds that they incurred in the development of that project. So it's a little bit different in this case. The credit enhancement agreement is based on a formula of calculating $4,200 per megawatt capacity, so that's 42 times 20, with a 2% annual escalator, and that is sort of the fixed tax payment that they're going to make to the city over the life of the TIF. When that payment becomes less than the taxes due, that difference is going to be what's reimbursed to them as a credit enhancement payment, and when at some point in the TIF that payment is greater than the taxes due, the developer's agreeing to pay the higher amount rather than just paying the lower amount, which would be the amount on their actual tax bill. They're paying more than that. So best way I think I've come up with to visualize this is to look at it and say the red line is what their taxes would be in this case without any credit enhancement agreement. The blue line is what they're agreeing to pay over the life of this TIF. So early on in the TIF, I'm estimating about 16 years, there is a period where what they're paying on that blue line is less than the actual taxes due, so there will be a reimbursement. Over about 16 years, that amounts to about $1.2 million. The way we typically look at TIFs in Sanford, we always talk about it in terms of percentages. So kind of reverse engineering this just to put it in language that we're more comfortable with. We're talking about a TIF that starts off at about a 65% reimbursement, reduces 3 to 6% every year down to about 7%, and then ultimately to 0, and then to negative, because they're actually, those lines crisscross, they're actually paying greater than the taxes that are, that red line, the taxes that would be due on that property. What's referred to in this case as a true-up payment. Everything below the blue line is what I'm referring to as the total TIF revenue, and that amounts to about $4 million over 30 years that can be utilized for these priority economic development goals that we identified. So that's basically the structure of this TIF and how it's going to work. It is a little bit different, but that's how we're envisioning it. So that's what it really boils down to. The credit enhancement reimbursement over the first 16 years that we're estimating to be at about $1.2 million. And the captured revenue, that's actually a typo. The captured revenue plus the true-up would be $4 million because it's 3.4 plus the $600,000 for the true-up. So apologize for that typo. The last thing I'll mention, there is always, and we always talk about this, there's an additional benefit from the TIF, aside from allocating this funding to some of our priority goals, having future councils have this money to look forward to handle issues like economic development, housing, affordable housing, homelessness remediation. We also are able to shelter this value from state revenue sharing programs and county taxation. The benefit of that to us averages out when we ran the analysis at about $2.7 million over the 30-year period. That's about $91,000 per year on the average. And that's money that we're either getting extra in state revenue sharing programs like state aid to education, and also money that we're saving by having a lower valuation as it relates to our county taxes. So I'm glad to take any questions that you might have on this. Interested in hearing public comment on it as well. And as I mentioned, I know that the developer is here and able and eager to answer any questions you might have if you'd like to hear from them.
Okay. Any questions? Jonathan?
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about this, but there's sort of this sprawling thing of solar farms everywhere. Are these being subsidized as far as rates over and above the normal base rate for CMP customers?
I think that's an excellent question for Dale. If I'm going to put him on the spot, I think he's well more qualified to answer that than me.
Evening. My name is Dale Knapp. I'm the head of development for Walden in New England. Happy to be here tonight in Sanford. So the quick answer to your question is no. So utility scale projects in excess of 5 megawatts do not get subsidized through the CMP distributed generation program. We're wholly responsible for all the network upgrades required to interconnect our project. So there is a program in Maine called distributed generation, which was passed by the legislature in 1920-ish. And so there is a component of some solar projects, and I think you have a few DG projects here in Sanford. Utility scale projects are not the same.
Okay, thank you.
So just
Go ahead.
follow up. That sounds like it's more on the interconnect piece, but I mean more like the price per kilowatt hour. Can you speak to that? Are you getting the going rate for, say, like a natural gas plant, or are you guys getting a different
No, we're
rate?
selling our power for less than the standard offer rate.
Okay.
So one of the benefits of utility scale solar is we can feed power into the grid for less than you pay, on your standard CMP bill.
Okay.
The project is not being subsidized by your CMP bill.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question that I keep hearing come up is, so solar panels are, they're glass, they're metal, there's some level of plastics, and there's some semiconductors and wires and things. Are there any known issues of things like PFAS or anything like that coming off from these panels and potentially contaminating the ground that they're sitting on?
We get that question a lot. And
I'm
so
sure you do.
We provided, this project will be supplied by a Tier 1 manufacturer, and their material safety data sheets are available, so we know what, goes into these panels, and those PFAS products are not used in their manufacture.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Nate?
I don't know if it was proper to ask questions now or when it comes up in the agenda item, but I think this is going to be more of a Keith question. One question I've heard is, or I guess, can you expound on the land itself that these panels are going on? Is there barriers on this particular land that would make it difficult for other types of development projects? And I guess, why is solar the best option here, or why are you recommending solar for this particular spot of land?
Yeah, some of it is what we would call back acreage. Some of it is also limited in its access to public roads. I want to be clear too that the developer in this case is not acquiring those. They have entered into land lease agreements with the property owners. And also it's worth noting that these are it's not like building a building on these sites that it's very hard to remove to see new development on this case. They can be removed if there were opportunities that were to come up in the future where there is new access, somebody acquires a lot where they've got great access to Alfred Road or New Dam Road. So there are issues with them right now for other development, and I think that solar provides one of the best opportunities to maintain the potential for housing or something else into the future if that situation were to change. Is that fairly accurate? I mean, you probably also speak to the accessibility of these lots.
Sure. So I think one thing that's key to mention here is that indeed we do lease the majority of the footprint of the project area. There is one parcel that we own immediately adjacent to the substation. But in Maine, there's a decommissioning law. And so not only is there a term life to the lease, at the end of its useful life, we have to bond decommissioning before we even put a shovel on the ground. So at the end of the project's useful life, we remove all the above and below ground infrastructure. And so it will be returned, you drive down New Dam Road and you sneak in around that corner on the Gilmet property today, that's what it'll look like in 40 years.
Thank you very much.
Sure, and
Thank you.
Accessibility is an issue. Most of it is backlot property. So, I think in terms of revenue for the city without any draw on municipal resources, it's a pretty good deal.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against? Okay. Seeing none, I declare this hearing closed. Any questions? Oh,
We do have one hand up.
do you know how to open that?
Diane Conley.
Diane? Diane Conley, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I have a question. I was hearing some of the figures. You got 140 acres, 132 jobs being implemented, and at the completion of this grid, you're going to have 2 jobs. Is that correct? Is that the correct figures?
I think I think that those are 132 temporary jobs that would be implemented during the construction of the project, and then a permanent 1 to 2 jobs to continue to maintain it over the life of the solar array.
Okay, and you had a list of all the people you wanted to help with the TIF money, but I saw no environmental help. You're going to take 140 acres, you're going to clear cut it, you're going to put this grid in, but you're not going to give back the environment. Why not? If you're taking from it, give something back to it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else to speak against? No. All right. Seeing none, I declare this hearing closed. Now for the consent agenda. Any questions or comments from the council on the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor, just a comment that we have to continue to remind ourselves it's now the Main Street Marketplace and not Midtown Mall, both in all of our departments and ourselves. So the permit is...
Not Midtown Mall.
The permit's under Midtown Mall,
Oh.
which technically is no
Just
longer...
the rewording.
New Marketplace.
It's going to take us a long time, I
Thank
think.
you, I know. I've got to remember that. And it's a beautiful sign that's there. Yeah, all right. Seeing none on the consent agenda, it is approved. All right, no old business, let's move on to new business. In order to review and authorize inclusion of the informational inserts to be mailed along with this year's tax bill, and you might have seen these, if you opened up the support materials, it was there. And Jody,
Close.
Jordan, could you and your mom switch names? It would be a lot easier
Yeah,
for me.
we'll get on the paperwork, don't
Okay, good, thank you.
worry. Okay, so do you all have a copy of the?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll notice on that front page that that's similar to what we've done the last 2 years. And same on the back page of that first page. The biggest change is that percentage of the tax bill. That was a new addition this year, and we felt that it told the story better of when you get your tax bill, kind of where all the funds go. So you can see, starting with appropriations, we have 1% goes to your county tax, 34% is municipal, 61% is the school, and 4% is the capital reserve. Then when we look at the revenue, it's about 20% municipal, 44% of the schools, and then 30% is property tax. And then when you get your tax bill in the mail, 2.43% of that goes to the county tax, 52.5% goes to municipal expense and CIP, and then 45% goes to the school expense and CIP. Then if you go down to the municipal expenditures and school expenditures, that is just kind of their percentage. So I had seen some comments online of, 7% of my tax bill goes to student and staff support, but that's just the percentage of what goes to the school. 7% goes to student and staff support. So that's relatively the same as it was last year. And then the back page is where we can get tax help. A couple programs had changed, but all of this was just copied from the state's website. And then you'll notice at the bottom the City of Sanford reminders. I had put in yellow that voting information, so where it's both in yellow, that will change depending on what happens on August 6th. And I reached out to the mailer or the printer for the mailing thing, and that timing is fine. So whatever happens August 6th, this will change to kind of correspond with that. But that was just a mental reminder for me to include that. And then the biggest change is the fire station referendum information. I'm just seeing now that I forgot to add titles to the station names, so I will title those. And I also forgot to add a link to the Sanford Connects, which will have the full financials on the back. I didn't have enough room to kind of get into everything on the back, so you'll notice a bit condensed. And then if people want that additional information, they can go to Sanford Connects. But going back to the first page, we're kind of focusing on those referendum details, what time the polls are open, where people will be voting, pushing for the absentee ballots. And then we get into our station challenges, and I've tried to keep them kind of condensed to those 4: size, location, safety, and age, because they kind of cover everything, I would say. Then we have the station benefits, and then we get into the pending federal safety requirements. And from comments from the deputy mayor and from Councilor Tranch-Montang, I tried to include OSHA and federal safety regulations so both people can get it. But the point of this really was to the backside. I think most residents, from what I've seen, know that information on the front, and they understand why we need new stations, what benefits the new stations have. It's now down to the finances, and we felt that this was kind of the perfect time to get in touch with all the taxpayers in town. So we start with that $42.5 million in total, if approved in November 2024. And that is something that I've really tried to incorporate into my communications, that $42.5 million is only for November, or this November, and that it will increase by $2.6 million each year. Then we have the funding, and I've tried really hard to let people know that funding is available, but we only can pursue it after we have a voter-approved project. And I've seen some comments online of people wanting some more information about that, but we don't have that information yet. It's kind of hard to speculate on what we can and can't get. but we felt that we could do the option one was nice to kind of, that 10 million might be probable, so we have that option, and then we have the option two where the city covers the full cost with no external funds. So then getting at the tax impact, and this can change based on council's recommendations, but I tried to kind of get what we called that 5-year bump in the property tax so that people can see that 2026 to 2031 where there's going to be that increase, and you'll see that little graph at the bottom, and you'll see that in the chart that I kind of let it up until then, and then it drops off, and then we can pick back up in 2054. So I would love some comments on what you all think about the financial side. Is this, what should I be adding? I was contemplating adding on the first two columns of the table that is what's added to net taxation per $1 per thousand of the house. I went back and I was a little bit confused on what that was, so adding a little line about that so people can better understand. And then, like I said, direct people to the Sanford Connect if they want to see those those 3 graphs that have been presented, if they want to kind of see the full breakdown for all of the years. But there just wasn't enough room, and I didn't know if people were going to want to get that into the weeds of it.
You did the gap after the 5 years, though, right?
Yeah, so up until 2033, and then it kind of started to drop off after then, ellipses to when it really started to drop down in 2054.
This is useful. This is really, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that.
I agree, Councilor Trans-Montaigne. And I just want to say this insert, I want to say Deputy Mayor Hurley and Mayor Mastarki and I worked on initially 4 or 5 years ago, and it took an extreme amount of time, so I really appreciate the effort that goes into this. Receiving some feedback on last year's insert, and just in talking to community members, the word appropriations can be confusing to people. I don't know if other people would agree with this or not. And also to stay consistent, I wonder if instead of appropriations, we could just use the word expense, which is kind of used below in other areas. Again, just making it as easy to digest as possible for people. And then on the second page of the municipal tax analysis, and I know it's to be determined, but can we make sure we have the address of Sanford High School on that page as in addition to, it'll be redundant, but I think the more redundant we are, if that goes forward, the better. And then on the fire station referendum information, which I think is fabulous, a couple little things. In the first paragraph on the page 1, today, Sanford Fire Department and so forth, I think we would add a period to that sentence because we included other punctuation. And then I really liked the way you worded the pending federal safety requirements, and I thought you made that really clear about, I really liked that piece, I just wanted to say that. But then tying that into the second page where it talks about securing funding for new fire stations, I thought it got a little confusing in that last sentence about where it says, however, due to, and I just don't know, I don't want to wordsmith this tonight, but I just want to say that I loved the last paragraph on the first page, and then I thought it got confusing under the securing funding. I don't know if it's just something to say, time is of the essence, because if we delay this project, others are going after that funding, or just, or maybe it's fine. I just wanted to share that feedback. And then kind of similarly, I jumped around. In that very first paragraph.
Saying where it starts at forever? I mean, however.
However, yeah, the wording just felt a little.
Yep, I can see what you're saying.
Loose in there.
But it's not, it's easy to fix, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's just referencing that last paragraph. I trust that you'll be able to wordsmith it, or it stays the same even, but just want to mention it felt a little loose. The issue is that time is of the essence. We can't delay, right?
Yeah, that's the main message.
And kind of on that note, the other thing, again, jumping around that first paragraph, and I'm almost done, I promise, I think we just have to really say, so it says for each year of project delay, the cost increases. I would say if this is not approved, our cost goes up 2.6 million. Like I would be just really because it says each year of the project delay, and I don't know if that's clear, like what is that delay?
What is the delay?
Did I cause that delay by voting no? Like that's, I think, be super clear on that. And then I feel like this next section might be more of a Steve. I think these are Steve's words, which I appreciate because I like the word leverage, but I worry in talking to our younger voters or some community members, there's confusion, like what does leverage funds mean? So I liked how you had noted in the paragraph about grant opportunities, and I wonder if we should stay consistent and say option 1, grants received 10 million or something, because you word that so well in the securing section. And then 2 more things. I love this table, awesome. I'm wondering if it would make sense, or in my brain, the way my brain works, I want to see the tax increase with no funds next to the full cost no funds, because they're related. And the last thing is maybe in that blank spot where we can't put 30 years, obviously, like you said, in that blank spot, I wonder if you could put to see the full table. I think you were saying that in a QR code maybe, but just to see the whole thing go here.
See the missing years or.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, the last thing, and I want to get feedback from the rest of the council on this, I actually don't feel comfortable. I agree there will be a 5-year bump that the council is committed to mitigating. I don't feel comfortable saying that for the next 30 years, the future council that is not me will ensure it remains below or at current levels. Because I don't think that we can promise that. We have other projects that could come. Who knows what will happen in 30 years? So to me, I don't feel like that's something that I would actually feel comfortable promising for a future council that I won't be part of. Thank you so much.
It almost, in that section, the thing about Sanford, which people don't understand, we have always been very good about not overusing bonding. And our history shows that. And I didn't know if looking to the past for that commentary there instead of to the future might be a way of saying something about Sanford's very conservative nature. And I don't know if you can think of something like that. Do you know what I mean? Look to the past instead to the future. Because she's right. We can't promise future city councils. We can't tie their hands and say, you must do this. But we can say, Sanford's history shows we are very conservative with bonding. You know what I'm saying? And that it has the same impact, in my opinion, as promising something that 7 other people might not promise. So, but I think all I'm going to say is I think what she's saying are things that I would agree with. The word leverage, I agreed. I was kind of like, it's not necessarily what everybody's going to attach to. And we're trying to talk to, the average voter. As the mayor keeps reminding us, reading levels are definitely not bachelor's and master's degrees, and that doesn't get used. Those words don't get used unless you're in the lingo.
Right.
Yeah.
And keep remembering, most newspapers are written on the 5th grade level, or they used to be when we had newspapers. So that's what, everything we put out to the public, we keep remembering, 5th grade level, 5th grade level.
And these aren't significant changes. These are pretty basic changes. You didn't see them as significant, did you?
No. Oh, they're huge.
What is she going to say? She's talking to the council. Come on. What is she going to say?
She'll tell us, right? Ronnie would tell us.
So, yeah, Ronnie would tell us. So do you feel comfortable putting this forward now with the changes, or do you need to see the changes? Jonathan?
I think we've kind of talked about some of the changes. I'll just kind of mirror a few of them and maybe suggest moving the securing funding section to above the previous page with the pending federal safety requirements, so kind of roll those in together. And if we could be specific about what those pending regulations are. I know room's a little tight on here.
I'm confused about where you want to move that, because I think it fits right where it is. So where are you trying to move this to?
So in the securing funding for new fire stations,
Yeah.
as Ann mentioned, this, however, due to pending federal safety requirements, et cetera, and maybe we just cut that
It's going to
out.
get competitive.
I was just suggesting maybe we can move that section above, just so it's together with that section. And then, does that make sense? No?
Yeah,
Steve?
if I could comment. So that first page is the reasons for the why.
Yeah.
Right? So it's focused on, the current station, the challenges with the current stations, the proposed station benefits. At one point in time, we talked about, when is the proper time to do this? There's two major factors that come into that. It's the cost escalator per year, the 2.6 million per year. And I do not feel the luxury of time any longer from a regulatory perspective. We knew we were up against, Title IX and other standards that we're not meeting currently in our current facilities. And we know that the carcinogenic aspect of our current stations is absolutely subpar. Now that these federal standards are coming forward and there's no pushback on the federal standards, at most I think we're going to see a two-tiered system here where the non-full-time, non-live-in stations may be given a longer pause. But for those of us that have full-time staff living inside these facilities, I'm not seeing the pause. So this has elevated our time constraints. That's what we're trying to get across here. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. So as I've attended Fiero conferences in years past, they would put examples, like I think one of the examples a year that I was there, they talked about the city of Seattle, Washington. That there was a massive lawsuit that was put upon them, and they had a ruling that they were giving a very short period of time to redo all of their stations pursuant to their deficiencies. The only way they survived is they had a plan in place to do that. We've got to have our plan in place, because when these regs come down and we haven't done it, if we don't have a plan in place, we're out of time.
No, I understand
So that's
that.
why we kept all of that on the front page.
Okay.
And then the leverage funding, yeah, my words, sorry. That's why we have Jordan, right? Just take it away from me. Let me go blah, blah,
Oh,
blah.
this would be so
take it
much
away.
worse if it was you. Oh, my God.
It would be very technical, but
It's so complicated.
But securing the funding, this goes into that cost as to why that we have this premise that we think it's feasible to achieve $10 million worth of grant funds in there towards these stations, given what we've observed for other requests for CDS funding in other areas. So that's why we kept it grouped on one page versus the other.
Jordan, on that securing funding for new stations on page 2, if you repeat the competition thing and reword it somewhere, it's like something to the effect that competition for federal grant opportunities will increase significantly as old stations are deemed obsolete or something like that, I think it'll work. And seem a little less confusing. But I know it's repetitive from page 1, but I think that's good. I think that's one of the things that we need to be repetitive on.
I agree.
So.
I think that is, from people that I talked to, like that was impactful for them. And when I was at the Trafton Center, they didn't know about that. And then once they heard about it, they're like, oh, wow, like I didn't realize that was going to affect everyone.
They must have loved you. Did they love you? They did.
They always do. Can't help it.
So was your, just to clarify, was your comment around the competitive funding landscape section?
Yeah, because it's in the first section a little bit, but if she uses that competition piece as a bigger one in the
Yeah, I think
in
I'd
the
like
problem
to see
sentence.
that reworded somehow. Make it seem a little more reader-friendly. Help get, there's impact if we're not, there's stuff out there right now. If we wait too long, then we're likely not, it's going to be a lot harder to get.
Are you guys okay with just a couple counselors, reviewing it one more time with Jordan, and then coming back on August 6th for the final? It should be as close to final as possible for the final vote, so that she can send it right out to the printer after all of our stuff on August 6th.
I just had one more comment, and to kind of mirror Ann's comment around the bump and the debt service. I think probably that needs some language massaging, because
I think Ann already did that.
I'm sorry?
Ann, didn't you already have some rewording for that?
I agree with that. I think it needs to be reworded so we're not committing something that we don't really have any control over, something that's 25 years old.
Yeah, good idea. Good. Bob?
I just think looking at that bump in that graph, and this is a talking point, it's really not a comment on this particular document, but since we're on the subject, I think we have to, as a talking point for whoever wants to engage on this, remember the bump that was there for the roads bond and how we were able to, through various means, mitigate that bump. And we were all very concerned for a number of years about that bump for the roads. And pun intended, it really did end up being just a bump in the road. It really didn't impact people too significantly, and I think everybody's really happy for the new roads that they have and the new roads that are going to come in the future. So, yeah, you can't promise anything, but the council and others, we were able to mitigate the roads, and this is what we're trying to do around the fire stations also. So we're presenting, as everybody knows, the worst-case scenario, and then hoping that we can mitigate the bump. And we were able to do it in the past, so once again, I think we have a decent track record of doing stuff like that. So.
Okay. Steve?
So going back to some of the council's comments, this section where it says securing funding for new fire stations, perhaps it's securing competitive funding for new fire stations to drive that home, because
That'll do it.
It is going to be a highly competitive environment for it. So, I mean, it is now. I can think back to not that many years ago, where the state of Maine was recognizing in the legislative process, there's a significant need for fire station construction statewide, and this wasn't that many years ago. And they put forward a bill to put $5 million out there for a competitive piece. And I can remember, Sanford testified, Augusta testified, and such and that the need, the $5 million didn't cover a third of one municipality's need for fire stations. So ultimately, it never passed. But it was the first time they really started talking about the degree of magnitude that the state is up against for these departments.
Okay. Jonathan?
One last comment. I noticed some inconsistencies around how we're talking about money. So there's grants, there's federal money, there's leverage, there's external funds. If we could keep it consistent to grants or federal funds, or I'm not tied to any particular wording necessarily.
You hate
I just
leverage.
want to minimize confusion.
Not leverage. Not leverage.
Yeah, not leverage, but if we can be consistent, I think that would be helpful for people to understand the money piece of it a little better. So, thank you.
So we have a suggestion that we have 2 counselors work with Jordan on this and present it August 6th. Who are the 2 counselors?
I did think it was a good idea.
So Maura and Ann?
My only challenge is, yes, we can do it like remotely.
It's
I'm out
not
of
that
town
much,
the week of the 22nd is all, so I just want to
Okay.
make sure I can give adequate support.
So then we need a motion to authorize Maura and Ann to look at the documents and have it ready for August 6th.
I feel
Can
like it's a
I have
homework
that
assignment.
motion? Somebody so move?
So moved.
Jonathan, a second. Pete?
Second.
All those in favor? There we go. All right.
Motioned homework assignment, okay.
So
We're getting there.
If I could comment, so we're working on a subsequent educational component, separate from this tax insert sheet, on the finance piece. And points that we're drawing upon already, when we started into the study of the departmental needs for type and number of apparatus, staffing, facilities collapsing from 3 stations to 2, at that time the cost estimates were $20 million all in, 2 stations, 2 new stations, right? Didn't know where or anything like that, but it were $20 million. Fast forward to today, we're more than double that with a $2.6 million escalator per year. So that's the cost of time. None of us could have predicted back then the impacts of COVID, which have been horrendous upon the cost of this project. But I offer that out for perspective. It's more than doubled.
Okay, moving right along. In order to approve a proposed City of Sanford Ordinance, Chapter 107, City Property, Article 1, Use of City Property, subsection 107-1, restricted access. This item must be read on two separate occasions. This is the first reading. Are there any more questions on this? Okay. We'll just keep, go ahead, Bob.
Madam Mayor, I just think it's worth the public to know that we did review this in executive session, which is why we likely don't have a lot of questions at this point.
Well, and we also reviewed it under
Yes,
the hearings.
earlier this evening.
Yeah. All right. In order to accept and authorize the city manager to sign a lease option with Executive Air Dock LLC for the development of aircraft parking and storage hangar, WHA, at the Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. Allison?
Good evening. I'm Allison Navia. I'm your Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport Manager. Just to zoom out for what we're talking about tonight, the way that it works at the airport is that the city owns the land. We operate it as an airport. When somebody from the private sector comes in and they want to make a development for a hangar or some kind of a business, what we do is we lease the property, so we do a long-term lease. For existing buildings, it's really easy because you can transfer the lease. They have a deed for the building and it changes hands. It's a little bit more difficult when new construction comes in because of the time that permitting takes, design, the costs associated with it, and all of that kind of stuff. So what we use in those circumstances and we offer as a tool or an instrument in the meantime is a lease option. So that gives them basically dibs on the property. It's only 20% of the full land lease cost, so they don't have to sign up for a long-term agreement because permitting might not come through or the design could take a long time. So that's what we're dealing with tonight. So this isn't a private hangar lease, this would be a commercial lease. So this person, this developer would be building a 10-unit hangar to be able to rent out for aircraft parking and storage. And you'll see in the next one, so the ultimate plan is for 40 units. The first one we're doing separately because it's kind of low-hanging fruit. It's part of that Presidential Lane development that we did. So that one will go to construction next spring. And then we did the other three separately so that if they fill up and the demand continues like it has been, then he can move forward with those separately. So we did it kind of conservatively there. So this allows us to make a little bit of revenue on the property in the meantime, and then it gives the contractor and the developer the security that they want so that they can move forward with the design of their project. So this one, this one's the first one, WHA. So that's the west side of the airport on Taxiway Hotel, Building A of, that's one. Yep, so A, B, C, and D, and then it'll be WHA 1 through 10 in that, and that's how we do the addresses at the airport. So that's why it looks a little funky, WHA on the agenda item.
All right. Any questions?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
A second, please.
Second.
Nate, go ahead. All those in favor? Thank you. And I think you're up for the next one, too, in order to accept and authorize the city manager to sign a lease option with Executive Air Dock LLC for the development of aircraft parking and storage hangars, WHB, WHC, and WHD at the Sanford Seacoast Airport, Regional Airport.
Same thing, the other three. I'll make a motion to approve B, C, and D.
Thank you. Have a second, Pete?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, in order to consider whether to utilize the right and option to nominate and vote for a candidate to represent Senate District 33 on the Maine Municipal Association, MMA Legislative Policy Committee, LPC, for the July 2024 to June 2026. And Steve, is this the one you're already on?
Yes.
No other little town wants to do it.
Yeah, the frustration with this is that pursuant to the LPC structure in District 33, Sanford being the largest municipality of the four that are in this district, Sanford has the ability to appoint. So that you have previously appointed me with the mayor as backup to the LPC. So then we expected that somebody from Waterboro, Alfred, or Lebanon would put a name forward, and they would run for the office and be elected. So you would have that for consideration for this evening. Nobody has done that. They didn't do that in the last session either. So I'm suggesting this is a prime opportunity for the council to consider putting forward somebody else within our organization to go forward to the LPC, and not differently than we had in the last legislative session. We had myself appointed, and then Ian Halseel as Community Development Director. His name was put forward. He was elected, and we had very strong representation there at the LPC.
And because of some of the stuff that's coming up, I would like to nominate Scott Soucy for this position, and hopefully you knew this beforehand. Because I really just like to nominate people for things anyway. So,
I'll
okay.
second that, but you don't have to drive up with Steve.
You may if you want to.
No.
That's not a requirement.
In case you want to come shopping on the way home or something.
Or someplace else. Or all right. We have a first and a second. We have a vote, please. Thank you. Okay. Scott, you're it.
Is there something wrong with two county boys going for a drive? We won't tell you how we measure distance, right?
Can you use those flashing lights? Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Next, in order to approve the Mousam River Solar Municipal Development and Tax Increment Finance District, this district will consist of 140.25 acres of authorize the city manager to enter into a credit enhancement agreement with the developer. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A second? Ann?
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? We discussed it out on this one. Okay, so all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? One opposed. Thank you very much. In order to approve the community benefit agreement between the City of Sanford and Mousam River Solar LLC, and to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on the city's behalf. And Steve, do we need more information on this one too?
Well, would you like Keith to present on this one as well? This is a first for our city, the community benefit agreement, but it's a very exciting opportunity pursuant to this tax increment financing district.
Yep. Thank you very much. Keith McBride, Director of the Sanford Regional Economic Growth Council. So we're talking about the same project, the Mousam River Solar Array. The developers in this case have entered into a power purchase agreement, and that's a very competitive process in order to get one of those. Part of their application for that power purchase agreement included, in essence, a promise to support workforce development through this project. And I'm giving you the very short version, but that's the gist of it, and I'm sure Dale could give it to you in graphic detail if you'd like him to address it as well. But the idea of supporting workforce development in solar power and clean energy jobs is a big priority for the state of Maine right now, and this is an opportunity for the state to help accomplish some of that goals. So this agreement that's in front of you tonight accomplishes that for the city and for the developer in the following way. The developer, Walden Renewables, is agreeing to pay $800 per megawatt in the capacity of this project, so that's roughly $480,000 over the period of 30 years, or about $16,000 a year. And the city will collect those funds, we'll have an account for them in finance, and the city will be able to utilize those funds to support scholarships and other workforce development training options for clean energy and solar jobs. We've specifically denoted in the agreement that that money will be utilized through our community partners, York County Community College and the Sanford Regional Technical Center, so it'll also go to supporting their programs specifically. We feel this is a mutually beneficial agreement. The city gets to utilize funds to support workforce development, which has been identified as a priority economic development goal. And of course, the developer gets to utilize this agreement to fulfill the promise that they made in applying for their power purchase agreement. So glad to answer any questions that you might have. And again, as I mentioned before, Dale Knapp from Walden is here with their attorney, Alyssa Tibbetts, who represents Walden.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. Could I have a motion then? Pete?
I'll motion to go forward.
All right, second? Ann?
And I'll second that.
All those in favor? And all those opposed? One opposed. In order to accept and approve the city's financial reports for the fourth quarter of the financial year 2023, 2024, and Ronnie, I believe you're on.
Good evening, Mayor Brink, City Councilors. I'm pleased to provide you with the fourth quarter financial reports, which include all of fiscal year 24. This report offers a high-level summary of figures and insights highlighting both revenues and expenses during this time frame. During the fourth and final quarter of the fiscal year, the city's budget remained on a steady course, balancing our commitment to providing essential services with responsible fiscal management. Starting with revenue highlights, our total revenues collected for this quarter amounted to $57.8 million. Revenues exceeded budget expectations by 1%, or $290,000. This primarily due to stronger than anticipated revenues from a variety of sources. The revenue collection is reflected in the revenue report that I would like to bring. The revenue collection is reflected in the revenue reports, but I would like to bring to your attention a few of those accounts. Automobile excise tax was budgeted for $3.9 million, and we exceeded our projection by $275,000. State revenue sharing, we exceeded by $151,000, general assistance by $376,000, investment income by $400,000, building permits by $155,000, license and fees by $146,000. I do want to note that for fiscal year 25, we did adjust our projections through the budget process. It is important to note that at year end, we're still awaiting some fiscal year 24 revenues. General assistance, we're waiting for $25,000 from the state for the June reimbursement, the veterans exemption for $21,000, the second cable franchise payment of $70,000. We do have some outstanding Harold Elfon reimbursements. It's approximately $10,000 that we've received for education and training. We're also awaiting our second homestead payment in the amount of $257,000. Two entries that are not reflected in your report is the movement of recreation fees to the general fund, as well as the special assessments for the Main Street Market. Did you hear that? Main Street Market.
You got it.
You win. So this week, I moved $129,000 into recreation fees and $21,000 into the Main Street Market for the Midtown Mall assessments. I'd like to talk briefly about the expense analysis for wages. The wage report in your backup represents all costs for full-time, part-time, overtime, holiday, sick, and allowances. Of the $16.3 million budgeted, we ended the year at $16.6 million. Expended are 101.9%. What is not reflected in the wage report is the council authorized use of overlay for negotiated contracts for police and fire in the amount of $362,000. In turn, leaving a small variance of what was budgeted compared to actual cost by about $52,000. Under the operation expenses, the expense summary report at month end includes total expenses of $37.7 million, including encumbrances of $238,000, or 100.8%, just 8% over target year to date. Without encumbrances, 100.1%, just 0.1% over the 100% target. Included in my reports is a list of accounts at year end that are over 100% used or had expenditures exceeding appropriations. Those departments include general assistance in the amount of $394,000, property and casualty insurance of $44,000, Goodall Memorial Library $70,000, public protection $53,000, information systems $35,000, SRCC at $104,000, the airport of $7,700, employee insurance and benefits at $130,000, environmental services at $20,000, the fire department at $13,000, debt service at $5,600, and assessing at $610. The general assistance non-contract services line, or direct cost of $300,000, is over budget by $503,000. As you know, 70% of that has been reimbursed from the state of Maine, and again, we're just waiting to receive June's reimbursement. The net variance between expenses and revenues in general assistance is $151,000. The council authorized the use of the overlay of $131,000, leaving a small balance of $19,000 that I will need to include in the 2% citywide transfer article. Insurance for property and casualty, just a reminder, this was just an increase in premiums. This account pays insurance coverage for property, equipment breakdown, crime, casualty, public officials, and employment practices. Goodall Memorial Library, the City Council authorized prepayment of fiscal year 25 funds in the amount of $70,000 to put towards securing the roof at the library. Public protection, this is hydrant rental with the Sanford Water District. This increased by about $49,000. Information system, full-time wages increased by $33,000 this year. As you recalled, this is due to the implementation of the Assistant IS Director, and we did not fill the computer program analysis position. Another line in the information systems budget was contract services. This is over budget by $22,000 due to software price increases. The Sanford Regional Communications Center is over budget, specifically in the overtime salaries account by $179,000 and part-time wages by $10,000. The majority of this has to do with employee turnover, training. The airport, the building maintenance with encumbrance of $9,900 will be over budget by approximately $15,000. Some of this overage, once the last 3 weeks of accounts payable has been posted, will either be covered within the operating budget, or the director will do a journal entry to move the capital money from the capital reserve, which is also used for building maintenance related items. Employee insurance and benefits, the one that's over significantly is Maine PERS. It's over by $138,000. This increase goes hand in hand with the negotiated contracts that were settled after the fiscal year budget was prepared. The fire department, the available budget is over by $13,000. The majority of the overage can be found in the overtime account, which is over $220,000. The fire department has received funding through a firefighter grant. The remaining firefighter grant funds in the amount of $57,000 are sitting in a grant account right now. Once the year end is closer to being closed, we're going to do a transfer back into the operating budget to cover the overtime. This again will be done at year end. Debt service is over budget by $5,600. We closed the bond for the airport Phase 2 and Phase 3 in May of 23 and October of 23, which means we did not know the true values of interest payments for budget purposes. Assessing is over budget by $610 with $1,600 encumbered for the remaining 3 accounts payable warrants. The assessor will close purchase orders and turn back in enough money to cover the overage. Environmental services, the line that's over there is contract services. It's overspent by $164,000. This is where we pay for curbside, rubbish, and recycling. I did mention the use of overlay and transfers a few times through this report. However, I'd like to recap the uses and the amounts just briefly. The council authorized use of overlay for 4 projects, and it is reflected in all of these reports. General assistance, again, for $131,000. Police and fire negotiations for $362,000, or $181,000 for each department. The fire department and capital plan for fire station pre-development activity in the amount of $168,000. I did want to just remind the council that $400,000 in these reports has been transferred from the Department of Public Works to Streets and Roads capital plan. This was approved a couple weeks ago at your council meeting. Again, at the last council meeting, this was discussed and approved. However, I did want to list out the savings within the departmental budget of Public Works. I think, Ann, you may have had a question about that. Wage lines totaling savings in the amount of $368,000 was part of the surplus in that budget. Contract services had a remaining balance of $33,000. The salt savings in the supply line was $343,000. Vehicle gasoline was $106,000, and vehicle maintenance was $46,000. I did want to mention that as of today, we are down 7 positions in that department. 2 EO1s, 2 mechanics, a mechanic helper, a working foreman at the transfer station, and an assistant city engineer. Moving on to the capital plan, the City of Sanford raised and appropriated in fiscal year 25 $4.9 million. $2.7 million was carried forward from prior years. $3.9 million was spent in this fiscal year between 9 different departments. $3.7 million was carried forward into July for fiscal year 25. Again, the majority of the carry forward is the Department of Public Works in the amount of $2.4 million, specifically set aside for streets and roads. In conclusion, we are closely monitoring the adopted budget and actively addressing all year-end concerns to ensure its successful completion. We hit our revenue projections, and I'm confident that we'll stay within the 2% authorized transfer use of budget and have not I don't believe we're going to have to use any budgeted use of fund balance. The budgeted transfer amount, the 2% is $678,000, and the budgeted use of fund balance for fiscal year '24 is $1.1 million. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'm surprised you can breathe.
What's the matter?
You're talking so fast. Like you don't take a breath.
It's a lot of information.
It was.
That's my Thursday afternoon meeting.
I can imagine.
Thank you, Ronnie.
You're welcome, Stephen. And I enjoyed every time you poked at Steve tonight more. That is so enjoyable for me.
He hates it, but you know.
Ann, do you have a question?
More a comment. And first, as always, Ronnie, thank you. I really enjoy the monthly municipal reports when I make time to read through the financial reports that we're seeing regularly now. I do think that the CIP summary is not included in that monthly report, and that might be something that's interesting moving forward, perhaps. And the reason I say that is I do think, as my fellow councilors know, I wasn't satisfied with the budget process, and I would have liked to have continued those discussions. I think the fact that we are carrying over an additional $1 million in our CIP this year over last year is something that we should really be thinking about as a council in the future. To me, that $3.8 million carryover feels, I just wonder if when we ask that question, are we using these funds? Can we use these funds? Is it appropriate to budget them? Really needs to be looked at and continued those discussions. I would have liked to not, I think that we're holding $4 million in the CIP that is a little bit too high.
More?
Well, my understanding from the charter is that once we budget something for the CIP, it has to stay, right? So you're saying
reduce the current year budget.
Reduce the current year budget. Do we have too much going on, you know?
Because if you add to this another $5 million, are we just going to continue, which I understand, right, there's that balance of we want that CIP buffer, if you will, right? And I understand that. And it provides the ability to continue that investment that we've made in our roads in particular. But I think there has to be a balance of the current tax, the budget, and that carryover.
Would it help to see what the CIP is, like the carryover is earmarked for? Because it must be earmarked for something.
We can see it in the CIP detail report.
Yeah, okay.
Just a comment.
All right, any other comments? Can we have a motion to accept the report, please? Ann?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
And a second? Nate?
Second.
All those in favor? Everyone was in favor. Great. Moving right along. In order to discuss the city's flag policy and consider whether revisions are necessary. And do I have a motion for this?
Motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss. Do I have a second? Ann?
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Who would like to say something? Jonathan?
All right, I guess I'll start this off. Since we already have a motion to discuss, I don't think I can present another motion, but I would just like to see Section 3 completely go away. I think we have the rest of it that covers normal flag stuff, but commemorative flags and other special request flags, I think, end up being controversial and being more divisive than anything else. So I would like to see that go away.
All right. Any other comments? Ann?
Oops. And I appreciate Councilor Martell's comment. I would just say that I think as an elected official that represents community members and a broad and diverse community members, that the ability to share commemorative flag when appropriate and under the guidelines of this particular policy or resolution, excuse me, is an important one that we should honor and treat it very carefully and respectfully. But it's one that I think we could use more. In fact, here in our community for certain other options. But I think it's an important one to continue as a freedom of council expression. If anything, within this particular resolution, I might consider a supermajority, which is that sorry, I didn't write down where the voting on that is. But that would be one change that I would consider, is that it would only, a commemorative flag would be flown only if a supermajority of the council approved it.
Okay, and Ann, where would that go?
I think it'd have to be a new section a little bit.
And I happen to like this policy, although I do agree with Ann's supermajority, but I would want a definition for what that means added to this. I think it saves us. It's only the council, it's not citizens telling us what to put on the flagpole. And it would be, a council would suggest it, and then we would have a discussion, and then we would vote on that. So it saves us from, actually, some of the problems other states have had, other cities, because they didn't have a policy in place. And all these other organizations came forward and wanted to fly a flag once they flew one flag. So this would protect us. Ann?
Just really quickly, and I think just because I brought it forward, I think under Section 3, Paragraph 3, decision to approve or deny a request to display a commemorative flag shall be made at a publicly noticed council meeting by a supermajority. And I believe supermajority is defined
Section 3.
in our charter, isn't it? Or is it just a general?
I don't think.
It'd be 2/3, it'd be 5 of 7.
Okay, thank you. So we could state that, just to be super clear.
2/3 majority? Yeah,
Yeah, be 5 of 7, 2/3. Yeah.
okay. So then Jonathan?
Yeah, I think if we were going to do that, Section 3 would be most appropriate. Do we need to vote to end discussion? Okay.
No.
You just you can just vote a motion that would.
Yeah.
So I will motion to strike Section 3 completely. I think I'll get overruled, but that will be my motion.
Do we have a second on that? That is dead. So Ann?
And I would make a motion to amend Section 3, Paragraph 3, to add with notice council meeting with 2/3 vote.
Approval.
Approval, right. Well, it'd be a 2/3, so 5.
2/3 vote.
Well, hold on.
But that's who's here.
The 2/3.
You can say 2/3 of.
No, it should be majority. like
Of those
every
present.
council.
Well, you can vote against it. Yeah.
It shouldn't be 2/3, it should be the majority, like if 4-3, and that passes. I don't think we should try to get, I don't think we should
So wait,
stack it.
I made a motion. Let's just see if there's a second, and then we can discuss.
I'll second it for discussion.
Go ahead, Ann.
So, Councilor Transplanting, I hear what you're saying. There are certain instances that are a supermajority or 2/3 vote is required on certain things we vote on, and I can't remember what those are right now. But what that does is it makes. Can you think of an example, Maura, of one of our? I know we have some.
I can't think of an
I
example.
know I can't
I don't
either.
think
I've
this requires
voted.
this. I think the way it should be, that we always do, or the rules, it shouldn't be.
Okay.
This is going down uncharted waters, where we could just put it in the majority.
It makes a stronger vote, is why I offered it as an option, kind of in respect of Councilor Martel's comment. So in lieu of completely striking it, it makes sure that there's a higher level of support for it from the council as a whole. So that's why I brought it forward as an amendment, just so you know where I'm coming from.
So you're trying to compromise, essentially, and give Jonathan part of what he wants.
He may not feel that way, but
May
that's
not
my
feel that
intent.
way, but that's your-
I
but that's your
appreciate the
intention.
gesture.
That's your intention.
Nate?
So I can't think of anything from the city's perspective in terms of 2/3 majority, but in my own personal experience, like when you're going to, like, if you're in an organization, you want to amend your own rules of governance, you usually get, it's a 2/3 majority type situation, this is kind of a way of governing ourselves here. I agree that when we fly commemorative flags, that it can cause some level of divisiveness depending on people's, ideas and, but again, we are all representatives at large of the city itself, and so I like to take that in consideration when I make decisions about, flying, any sort of public, government speech of that sort. So I do think a 2/3 majority here helps save us from any sort of, or I guess a 2/3 majority I think would help be more clear that we as representatives of the city of Sanford, Village of Springvale, Catherine Springvale, therefore, is
Northern Sanford.
yes. Gosh, I lost my train of thought now. But anyway, I think a 2/3 majority could help us, speak to the citizens when we say that, why is there, a certain flag that it's not, government related in itself. We can say, well, it wasn't just, a 4-3 decision on that. It was, almost united front on that. So I think a 2/3 majority makes sense.
For a united front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other discussion on Ann's proposal? So for all,
I just want to say, I'm okay either way. I mean, I'm okay with a majority or I'm okay with a supermajority. I think I think Pete makes a good point, but also this gives us a little extra safety measure. People seem comfortable with it. I will likely vote that way for the supermajority.
she's not saying super, she's saying 2/3 majority. Yeah.
It's a better way of saying super.
Right, but I don't want to find a definition that means something else.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Totally. I don't think it's in our.
She just put it up and we're in the middle of discussion. Steve?
I was just affirming that she has her hand up.
Okay, Diane?
Madam Mayor, I'm probably going to get shot for this one. I brought up this flag issue about 4 years ago, and I just can't believe we're sitting here reinventing the wheel every time someone has a disagreement or a prejudice against someone else or whatever the problem is. Okay? I would invite the councilors to reread Zendel Bouchard's letter. If you want a supermajority, that's fine. Okay? But to me, it's the majority of the council. It always should have been that way. I didn't bring this up to be a problem in the city, and that's what it seems to have boiled down to, because we're talking two sides of the fence here. If one councilor does not like it, so be it. The rest of you voted for this. Let it stand. Okay? And as another comment, Mr. Buck, can you please sharpen up the Zoom? It's unreadable, and we have councilors that don't turn on mics. You can't hear the conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second, and that's for the 2/3 majority. All right, so all those in favor? It's moved.
John is very brave and does it all the time.
You know what, I'm rejecting it. I'm voting for it.
Okay. So anyone opposed? One opposed. All right. Moving right along. Council member comments. Nate?
I have
Could this be about the ball game?
one of them is. The other one, the other one's a little different. Well, it's not about the game itself. So the first one I want to do is I want to recognize our Sanford Sewage District for helping the Kennebunkport Sewage District this past week. For those who may not be aware, there's unfortunately been a situation in Kennebunkport where untreated water is being dumped into the Kennebunk River. It's been doing that sounds like for around a week or so at this point. And Sanford thankfully has been able to help by having some extra bacteria that they use to treat the water and sent it to Kennebunkport to help clean up as much water as they can, but this is going to be a very long, drawn-out problem. So,
Isn't something actually harming the bacteria, from what I understand? I'm just asking. The article I read implied that the bacteria itself was getting harmed.
I don't know the specific issue as to what's coming on with the, the Kennebunkport, why they're releasing untreated or partially treated water into the Kennebunk River, but all I know is that it's happening. And Sanford was able to provide some level of help to Kennebunkport. I'm not saying this just because I'm on the Sanford Sewage Board, but part of this is that this is one of the areas where we tend to not think about, the Sanford sewage. It's out of sight, out of mind until it's not. So I do want to commend everyone at our collection and treatment facilities at Sanford Sewage District for helping us keep quiet and not have any issues going forward, because when there's a problem, there's a major problem. Second, someone mentioned about baseball. As people might be aware, the Sanford Mainers team, part of the New England Collegiate Baseball League, is going on right now, and they have their All-Star game coming up on the 21st. And we have about 4 players, I believe, that are set to be there right now, but each team is allowed to present one person for a fan vote. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because our fan vote choice for Sanford is TJ Curley, who is a Sanford native. The first I think we've ever had of a Sanford native being on our team. And so voting ends at the end of the day on Thursday. I recommend everyone to go to the NECBL website or the Sanford Mainers Facebook page, Instagram, to find the link to go and vote for one of our own to go to the All-Star game.
That's really exciting. I remember when he was like this big, like this tiny baby holding your hands. We also had some people picked up in the draft, some former players, is that correct? Yes,
we've had quite a few, I think 4 or 5 that have played over the last couple of years have been drafted. Some of them, I think about 3 of them were as recent as last year.
Great.
Super. Anyone else? Comments? Bob?
You can go. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is a comment and a pledge, and you can write this down, Steve, in that I was stuck in traffic on Main Street maybe 2 days ago. No, actually, it started last Friday, I believe, and then again today. And I had the realization that we really, and Steve already knows this, and Matt Hill already knows this, and there's been discussions about it already, but we really have to get in front of the raise grant work in our downtown and really get input from our local businesses and maybe think out of the box. And I will share that last Friday with the light out and that construction, we saw a marked decrease in our sales at Franny's. So as a downtown business owner and a citizen and somebody that really cares for our downtown corridor, I volunteer to help community conversations or trying to get people's thoughts or out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to those conversations around how do we make that construction the least impactful to downtown as possible. It's going to be impactful, it's going to be hard, but how do we make it the least hard? And anyway, I'll be part of those. I'll dedicate time and energy to helping those conversations happen. So that was my comment.
I
Thank
thought
you,
of you
Ann.
when that was happening. I did.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments on the meeting. I mean, first of all, the last article that we worked on regarding the flagpole, I disagree in the sense that we have to keep revisiting this every time somebody has a complaint about it. I mean, this is a fairly liquid document that it's a living document that's going to change with the times. And so for us to come in and look at this, something that we created, and say we can make it better, at least that's the hope. And again, Pete and Jonathan may not agree, and I'm going to have more to say about that in a minute, but we're trying to make it better and fairer. And let's hope that that's what we did here tonight through this discussion. If we didn't, we'll probably revisit it and come back and talk about it again. And that's the nature of, I think, the work that we do, that we bring these things up, we discuss them in the effort to make them better, clearer, and that's better for the community. It's not necessarily better for the council. So, and I think going back to Becky's comment right at the beginning, that we all work together, Jonathan and I don't agree on a lot of things politically, but yet we joke about it. We can now pat each other on the shoulder and say, you're probably not going to agree with this, as Jonathan said tonight, and we can joke about it a little bit. So we can agree to disagree, and I appreciate the fact that, this would have been a much deeper argument, if I can use that word, had we had not developed the rapport that we've developed. So it's all good. And I'm not always going to be on the winning side of that. I've been on the losing side of that. And you have to take your lumps and you have to move on, and that's how it works. So I just wanted to make that comment. But also, the second thing is I'm looking through all the fire station materials that we're working through, and those are coming at us fast and furious with a lot of videos and these handouts that we're going in. So my challenge to the citizens of Sanford is to educate yourself. There's no reason for anybody in this city to not know that there's going to be the bonding for 2 fire stations on the budget this year. And figure out how it's going to impact you, figure out why we need to do this so that you can vote correctly on this in November. And start that challenge now, because we have videos out there, we have Facebook posts out there, and this is the overarching point here, there's absolutely no reason for you to be up to your eyeballs, not to be up to your eyeballs in information on these firehouses, so this community can make an informed and accurate decision in the fall, which is very, very important. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Jonathan?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for a good discussion about the flags, and I appreciate the compromise. I think it puts us in a better position so that we have a more significant majority for something that might be controversial. The other thing I wanted to do is remind people that the next meeting, August 6th, I believe it is, we'll be discussing the voting station consolidation proposal. So anybody that is interested in speaking to that, please come to the meeting or join online and make sure you're part of that discussion. We do get emails, and most of us do read them. I try to read them when they come in. So if you can't join via Zoom or in person, please send emails and give us your feedback on that proposal. So thank you.
All right. Is there any future agenda items? Ann?
I hesitate. This does not need immediate action, though. But it's Christmas in July, right? So it got me thinking a little bit of our annual scramble for a Christmas tree. And I can't remember if I spoke about this with other counselors already, but I would love to look into, and I'm happy to do the groundwork for this personally, but I would need some guidance. I don't know who, Steve, that guidance would come from, but I'd like to look into planting a Christmas tree in Central Park. It obviously wouldn't be the grand tree this year, but to me, it makes sense to invest in the purchase of a Christmas tree that's there forever, that we can decorate for the holidays and don't have to scramble to move in and out. It would save, what's that? We just have to trim it. It would save some time and so forth, but I don't know, I could certainly reach out to greenhouses, but I don't know if there's other things I would have to look into. So I can do the greenhouse part or look at pricing and budgeting, but if there's other things, Steve, I should be taking into consideration when I do that work, let me know. And then maybe in September, I could bring it to Property Sub, or if there's, is that a crazy idea? Or
No, I think
it's a great idea. Other towns have done it, yeah.
It's too big, you just cut it down and plant another one.
What's too big?
Well, when they get super huge, and you don't want guys
You
up
can trim
there.
those types of trees. If you pick the right one, you can trim it and keep
Yeah,
it.
Scotch pines probably the way to go.
I would suggest, if we're going to do that, to get advice from somebody who really knows what they're doing. And all the maple trees that we planted in front of the junior high, Aaron Stam was the one who told us what trees would grow that close to the road. And those are sugar maples that they could be tapped if that school ever has a program like that. So just let you know, he is back in Sanford now. So he would be a good person, and he knows all about the trees and stuff. So good. Anything else?